Good day, and welcome to the Child Welfare Response to Sex Trafficking and Introductory webinar. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Christy Stankovic. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and good afternoon or good morning to some of you. We'd like to welcome you to this webinar. And before we get started, we just wanted to give a brief introduction of our webinar tools. You'll see on the GoToWebinar pane on your right, there's an open-ended question, and you can type in there of your response when we go through the next several slides. You may have a polling question. You select your polling question when they appear on your screen, and you also may access your 5 handouts in the right-hand side of your tab by clicking the plus feature. At this time, we'd like for people to use the question feature to let us know where you're joining us from, as well as your position title. So I'll wait just a moment and read those off to see who's joined this call today. Great. We've got Colorado, New York, we've got Pennsylvania, Louisiana, a couple folks from our nation's capital, Ohio. We've got grant managers and development unit directors, family services, and a whole slew of people. So thank you for your response. We definitely appreciate your participation. Next, we'd like to ask if you're joining in a group setting, how many folks are joined in your group setting? Go ahead and enter that number now. Great. We've got 8 from the Resource Center. Thank you. We've got 2 from a couple other places. Great. Thank you so much. And just to give a brief introduction of our speakers today, we have Jennifer Marcelli, a Program Area Manager of the Center for States, Charmaine Britton of the Constituency Services, and Hans Bone of our Internal Evaluations. And of course, Rosie Gomez of the Children's Bureau. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Rosie Gomez.
Great, thank you. Well, on behalf of the Children's Bureau, I want to also welcome those that have joined today's webinar. As you're aware, the issue of human trafficking is complex, so building the infrastructure and capacity of child welfare agencies, as well as other entities and partners to address this issue is so important. The Children's Bureau has invested many resources to address human trafficking, including the ability to provide a variety of resources to states, which includes the work of the Capacity Building Center for States. So I have to say that they've been moving at an incredible pace to be able to provide resources and products that are useful for the field, and I know you will be pleased to hear about the work of the Center for States, as well as part 1 of the curriculum that has been developed. So I want to thank you for your interest in this topic and for the work that many of you are already doing to prevent sex trafficking and improve child welfare's response to trafficking victims. So with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer Marcelli.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jennifer Marcelli from the Capacity Building Center for States, and I am going to provide a quick, brief introduction to the Capacity Building Collaborative and the Center for States, and then we'll get you started on learning about the sex trafficking curriculum we have for you today. So the Child Welfare Capacity Building Collaborative is a service of the Children's Bureau, which is part of the Department of Health and Human Services and the Administration for Children and Families. The collaborative is a partnership between 3 centers, the Center for States, the Center for Tribes, and the Center for Courts. And in a few moments, I'll be going into a bit more detail about the Center for States. Next slide. The goals of the Capacity Building Collaborative is all about what the title implies, building capacity. So we would like to build capacity not only in individuals, organizations, but also systems to lead to improved outcomes for children and families. We work with partners to identify, design, and implement innovative solutions and strategies that meet the states, tribes, and territories and courts' unique needs. to improve outcomes for children and families. In October of 2014, an organization called ICF was awarded a contract with the Department of Health and Human Services, the Children's Bureau, to establish this child welfare capacity building collaborative, and the Center for States was born out of that. The center partners with the Center for Tribes and the Center for Courts to build that larger collaborative, and it consolidates services that had been previously run through the National Child Welfare Resource Centers. This consolidation increases coordination, leverages resources, and provides more service provision. So we're able to work with states and tribes and territories to provide capacity building resources. The goals of the center are to improve those system organizational and program performance, again, to enhance safety, permanency, and well-being. The center's approach is to provide evidence-based, consolidated capacity-building services to support our public child welfare agencies in effectively initiating and sustaining change and innovation. The Center for States supports public child welfare agencies in effectively initiating and sustaining change and innovation. We have a broad range of services. They fall under tailored services, constituency services, and universal services. Tailored services are those technical assistance and consultation that's provided to states and territories that include intensive project and are tailored to the specific needs of the child welfare agencies. Constituency services are targeted towards peer networking opportunities and learning experiences like the one you'll hear about later. And universal services provides products and tools for the child welfare field. Finally, we will now be talking about the learning experience, and the learning experiences are intended to assist in building staff knowledge and skills, and they are developed as e-learning opportunities as well as training curriculum and webinars. They're developed in a way that allows each jurisdiction to customize their content to make it relevant for their agency, and you'll hear a bit about that from Charmaine in a moment. If you would like additional information on the Capacity Building Collaborative or the Center for States, you'll see on this next slide the website. So please visit the website, and you can learn more information about what services that we have to provide and tools that are out there. And now I'm going to hand it off to Charmaine, who will discuss the sex trafficking curriculum. Charmaine?
Hi. Hello, folks. I'm Charmaine Britton, and in fact, about that website, you might even want to bookmark it because there will be plenty of stuff for you to keep on coming back for on our website. I'd like to set the stage now and explain what we're going to do today. We are going to review the competencies and the objectives and the components of each of the modules for our curriculum entitled Child Welfare Response to Child and Youth Sex Trafficking. We will describe the value and why you would like to use these modules and how it could benefit your agency. We've got 4 modules, and we'll start diving into them. So let's go to the next slide, and I'm going to do an overview of the training modules. But before we do that, we have a question for you. We'd like you to use your chat feature. It's on the next slide. And our question to you is, how is your agency currently addressing the needs of survivors of child sex trafficking? And Christy, I'm not sure if I'm going to see this or not, so perhaps you could call out what people are writing in their chat box.
Of course, I'll just give it one moment.
What are you currently doing?
Jennifer says we have a task force led by the governor. Jessica writes, specialized unit developed to support individual and tailored needs. Lorinda writes, individualized response based on child youth needs. And Lynn writes, implementation of sex trafficking requirements from HR 4980.
Okay, great. Well, one of those requirements is to provide training on sex trafficking, and that's what this curriculum is all about. On the next slide, we have our overarching goals for what we want to have happen with these learning experience. We want to increase the awareness, knowledge, and skills related to child and youth sex trafficking and the legislative requirements. As we go through today, I'm sure that some of you are familiar with the fact that there are other things in that legislation beyond sex trafficking, and our learning experience is specifically addressed to those sex trafficking provisions within the PL 113-183. We also hope to improve the infrastructure, including change in policies and procedures related to identifying and screening processes. We also hope with our learning experience that there's going to be a change in culture and climate to reflect an increased commitment to focus on sex trafficking, and also, very important, to enhance the engagement and partnerships to address PL 113-183. We have worked very closely with the Children's Bureau to develop this series of learning experiences that are going to target our child welfare community to build their capacity to support the effective implementation of PL 113-183. So we've developed a series of modules, and the first module is specific to caseworkers, the second module for supervisors, the third module for administrators and managers, and the fourth module is more of a standalone, and it is for caregivers. Now you will see 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3 should be taken by administrators and managers. So we would want administrators and managers to go through modules 1 and 2 as well as 3. Supervisors should go through module 1 as well as module 2, and caseworkers just module 1. All right, so let's move on to our next slide, and we're going to delve into the specifics of each of the modules. So for the first module, again, our audience is caseworkers, supervisors, and administrators/managers. Each module is, this module is 10 hours long, or 1.5 days. In this module, and I'm going to orient you to the overview document that's on the handout section. Let me just pause for a minute and explain what you have in your handouts. You will see that we have uploaded PDF versions of the curriculum or the training guide for each of the 4 modules: caseworkers, supervisors, administrators, and caregivers. We also have an overview document that contains an overview of the entire learning experience, and then for each module we have the training agenda for that particular module, and then we also included the training competencies and the learning objectives. So if you haven't done so already, you might want to open up the overview document and print it if you have that available to you, and just review that as we go along. I should also tell you, and I want to make this really clear right up front, because I'm sure folks have this question in their minds already. Well, this is great, but if I'm going to customize it, don't I need it in Word? And the answer is yes, you do need it in Word, and we will be providing that to you in Word at our Training of Trainer event on December 15th. So all of the documents related to this learning experience will be available in Word. Obviously, the PowerPoint documents will be available in PowerPoint. But for the purposes of this webinar, we can only upload PDF documents. So that is what is in your handouts right now. So going back to the caseworker curriculum, our competencies, what we hope to have happen as a result of this training, is we want caseworkers and supervisors and managers to gain knowledge of children and youth who are victims of or at risk of sex trafficking. And for those of you who are familiar with the legislation, you know that it does include those children and youth who are at risk of sex trafficking. We want folks to understand the impact, the laws and policies related to protecting children and youth at risk of sex trafficking. And within that, it's obviously going to be customized for your state because every state will have different policies and processes related to this. We want to identify the characteristics that place children and youth at risk of sex trafficking. We, by the end of it, folks will know how to identify the needs of children and youth sex trafficking victims and survivors. They will use trauma-informed and gender-specific, culturally responsive approaches, and they will be able to demonstrate collaboration and partnership across agencies and providers. This curriculum in particular has some wonderful hands-on experiences, lots of activities to engage participants. We use digital stories, which I'll talk about a little bit more. There's a great section on the use of language, and when working with victims and survivors of sex trafficking, language for you as caseworkers and supervisors to know about, and also language to avoid, sensitive words that children and youth may not want to be hearing about. For example, we don't use the word pimp when talking with children and youth because they're not going to identify the person who is exploiting them as their pimp. Rather, it might be their boyfriend. So that's a great module. Then there's a really wonderful experiential activity at the end of this 10-hour curriculum. For Module 2, our audience is supervisors, but also we would encourage administrators and managers to participate in this one as well. And that's on our next slide, Christy. This particular module is 3 hours in length. So you can slice and dice this any way you want. You could have a day-and-a-half training and then add the 3-hour supervisor curriculum at the end of that 2 days, or you could provide this training at a different time. So on this curriculum, what we hope to have happen is that supervisors will have the ability to apply, monitor, and support the policies that are unique to PL 113-183. Supervisors will have the ability to support effective casework practice related to working with children and youth who are victims of child sex trafficking. For this module, the curriculum is really going to be focusing on those activities related to supervising practice. We're going to spend some time on looking at both the technical and the adaptive challenges that come with the implementation of any kind of new law and practice. And participants are going to get the opportunity to apply coaching techniques in order to supervise to best practice. We also spend quite a bit of time talking about trauma and looking at supervising through a trauma-informed lens, both for caseworkers and working with families and children and youth, but also the trauma that caseworkers will experience in working with children and youth who are victims and survivors of sex trafficking. There are also opportunities for customization of this curriculum, and we have placeholders throughout the curriculum on places to add material that is specific to your jurisdiction. The next module is Module 3. And for that module, that is for administrators and managers. And for this module, we want administrators and managers to understand their role in delivering these services and implementing programs related to PL 113-183. And again, It's really important, though, that administrators and managers complete Module 1, caseworker curriculum, and Module 2, supervisor curriculum, to really know the specifics and understand the details of the curriculum and what is being implemented. For this module, we spend a lot of time talking about the administrators and the manager's role. We talk about developing the capacities, and our capacity building center highlights 5 different capacities that we want to help states build and develop in their own jurisdictions. And so we have identified those in this curriculum, and those are capacities, for example, related to knowledge and skills, through engagement and partnerships, through the infrastructures that are necessary to support PL 113-183, and the resources that are necessary as well to, again, implement PL 113-183. We also spend a bunch of time talking about technical and adaptive challenges that the administrators and managers will need to deal with as they implement this legislation. Also, we'll be talking about using data, and we have a snapshot on homeless and runaway youth in this curriculum because this is such a high-risk population. So we talk about the homeless and runaway youth population, and then how to use data to manage and implement the policies and practices related to 113-183. And then lastly, we talk about that cross-system collaboration that is so necessary for successful implementation. Child welfare can't do this on their own. We need juvenile justice and law enforcement and mental health providers and medical providers and just a variety of other people in our community who can help us implement this legislation. So next, we're going to talk about the caregivers curriculum, and this curriculum is 2 hours in length. It is a standalone curriculum, and our audience for this is foster parents, kinship caregivers, or any other caregivers who work with this population. For example, maybe staff in residential treatment centers. And from this module, we would hope that the caregivers would have awareness about the child welfare system's response to child sex trafficking, and most importantly, the role of foster parents and caregivers, that there's an awareness of the federal definition of sex trafficking, and that caregivers are able to recognize the risk factors associated with children and youth who are victims or at risk of sex trafficking. And then this is very important to understand the impact of sex trafficking on survivors. And one of the ways that we're able to communicate that in our curriculum is through our digital stories. And then lastly, the ability to respond to youth who are in care and who are victims or at risk for sex trafficking. Again, this curriculum can be customized, and there are placeholders in the curriculum to provide information about your agency's processes and protocols for foster parents and caregivers, and most importantly, the reporting of sex trafficking, because that's also a responsibility. We also leave some space for jurisdictions to report data and statistics relevant to commercial sex trafficking, and then agency-specific information as well. Now I'd like to talk about some of the additional training materials that are included in the package that we have going out to our country related to this curriculum and learning experience. On our next slide, we have the additional training materials that we provide. We have developed handouts that are ready to be printed. And within those handouts, we also have placeholders for agency-specific handouts. You can use our template, or you can certainly customize them to your agency and use your own template for the handouts. We have PowerPoints, and again, we have the same thing where we have provided a template, and we have the beautiful colors of the Center for States, but perhaps you want to use your own PowerPoint template, and you can do that. Just cut and paste the PowerPoints over to your own template. At the Training of Trainer webinar in December, we will provide a handout for specific instructions on how you can customize the PowerPoints to your jurisdiction. We also have digital stories in the package, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second, as well as a pre and post test. And Hung Fo is going to talk about our pre and post test. And the digital stories are a real highlight of this curriculum. The digital stories were created in a couple of different workshops, one in Portland, Oregon, and the other in Baltimore, Maryland. And digital stories, because you might be asking yourself, what are digital stories? Well, digital stories is the practice of using computer-based tools to tell stories. It's more than just a video. They are telling a story, and they focus on a specific topic. In our case, it's focusing on human trafficking from the perspective of survivors, staff, a supervisor, and a provider, as well as a caregiver. So we've got, I think, 5 stories from survivors, a couple staff, a supervisor, a provider, and a caregiver. So the digital stories contain a mix of computer-based images and pictures and text and recorded narration and video clips and music. It's very important to note that the digital stories are crafted and created by the individual who is telling the story. So they select and they write their own narration. They decide on the transitions, the timing, the selection of music. They decide on the pictures that they want to illustrate the various components of their story. So these are not in any way professionally produced. That's air quotes in case you can't see me, and of course none of you can see me. They're not professionally produced. They are told by the storyteller to communicate their message. Each of the stories are approximately 2 to 3 minutes long, and we have questions that you can pose in the curriculum after each story. And we try to get at the multiple aspects of each story as appropriate. We provide questions about culture and gender and the impact and trauma that you might see illustrated in the stories. You can also use the stories separately, and those will be available for downloading along with a discussion guide if you just want to insert the stories in your own training. So there's lots and lots of flexibility on using the digital stories. Each curriculum has at least 2 digital stories. The caseworker curriculum has 4 digital stories. I think the supervisor curriculum has 3. And they provide a perspective, and they are able to address important learning points for each of the modules. So they're incredibly powerful, and they make it real for people who are taking this curriculum and really bring home what's so important to know about in terms of working with children and youth who are victims of sex trafficking. In our next slide, we are going to talk about why you should use these training modules. And on the next slide, we explain how the curriculum provides customizable materials. We have full curriculum, instructions to the trainer as well as the content to be presented. But within that, we also provide placeholders. It's a little paintbrush icon for you to insert the material that is relevant to your jurisdiction. We also have resources and toolkits that have been created by the center that we link to from the curriculum, so you'll want to check those out as well. And we also provide links to websites that offer additional information. Like, for example, Suzanne Garcia from the Center for Tribes helped us with developing this curriculum, and we have a website on working with tribal youth that you can also access. We believe and we know it's effective training, and most importantly, this curriculum on the next slide, we talk about why this is effective training, and that this content was developed by subject matter experts both at the national level as well as survivors who have experienced sex trafficking. So there's been lots of vetting, and these are the best practices in working with children and youth and families who have been impacted by sex trafficking. It addresses all of the key legislative requirements that are contained in PL 113-183 related to sex trafficking. And the supplemental materials are also there to support the content. And these materials are available for downloading when you're able to take the training of trainers in December. You'll be able to download all of the digital stories right there on our website. So it's all in one package and available for you to download as you need to. So let's just talk a minute about utilizing these training modules and how you're going to access them. You're going to access these modules through our CapLearn website. And some of you might be asking, well, where is the CapLearn website? If you go to our webpage, which is capacity.childwelfare.gov, and you go to our homepage, you're going to see a line of options, a bar at the top of the webpage. And on the far right, there's a link to one that says Learn. It's that easy. Just click on Learn, and that will take you to our learning management system called CapLearn. On that website, you will need to log in. In order to access these materials, there will be a login required. And it's very easy to do the first time to register and to create a username and password. We'll also have technical support if you have any issues at all, but there shouldn't be. And then after you log in, you'll get to the home page, which contains an overall description of our sex trafficking curriculum and features the materials that are going to be available to participants. And we'll show you what it's going to look like on our next slide. This is what it's going to look like. It is not available right now. We're finishing up the 508 compliance requirements, but it will be available on December 15 for the Training of Trainer webinar. So as you can see, you click on the tile that says Child Welfare Response to Child and Youth Sex Trafficking Learning Experience, and then you'll get that description of what it is, and then you can click on each individual module, and then you will enter the curriculum, or then you can also download each of the modules as a chunk by clicking on that smaller rectangular box underneath each of the rectangles. You can download the entire curriculum, which will include the training guide, the handouts, the PowerPoint, and the digital stories by clicking on that rectangular box at the bottom of the page. Well, I'm pointing to it, but you can't see it, but I am. So that's how you are going to access the curriculum. Right now, what I'd like to do is to turn it over to Hung So, who's going to speak to the evaluation component of this training.
All right, thank you, Charmaine. Good afternoon or morning, folks. So I do see a lot of familiar names as I look down on the attendee list. So if we were in a in-person training environment, I'd love to say hello to you folks, but we'll just have to do it virtually. So now that Charmaine has you excited, hopefully, about the curriculum, I'm supposed to keep you excited by talking about evaluations. So I know some of you might be wanting to step away for a coffee break at this point, but please don't, because I'd like to sell you on this, and a couple of reasons why I think evaluation are important to this curriculum, and then also to the Capacity Building Center as a whole. As Rosie mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, the Children's Bureau has invested substantially in capacity building services to include this curriculum. So we want to make sure that whatever we are providing to you guys, to states and territories, in terms of services, that they are the best services possible, that they are effective, that they're doing what they need to do or intended to do. So what we'd like to do is to make sure we get your feedback. And so I'm going to give you really an overview, essentially, of what you'll get in more detail in the next webinar on December 15th, and also in writing as well after that. So we really have kind of a two-part evaluation, the way I look at it, for this particular curriculum. And the first part is really to get your feedback, you as the trainer or the person in the state or territory that's going to be implementing this curriculum. So starting with today, actually, you're going to get a survey asking you about this webinar, asking you about sort of your intended sort of use and expectation for this curriculum. So we really want to kind of get things started really with the evaluation. And then also, as you start to think about or use the curriculum, we're really going to want to hear from you then as well, and we'll administer some surveys to you then to get your feedback, whether the curriculum was useful, whether how you adapted it, how you used it, all those things that will help us to essentially do CQI or improve our own process and our own products for the future. So that's really part one, in my mind, of the evaluation. The second part really is for you guys. It's really part of the curriculum itself, and it's a way that you will be able to evaluate the impact of training at your sort of level, whether it's state level, local level, whatever it is, however you decide to roll out the training. And this is where it will include the pre- and post-testing instruments, as Charmaine mentioned. It's also going to include satisfaction questions as well for the trainers, for the trainees to provide feedback about the trainers in your locality. And we'd like to provide these things through web-based instruments. And the big bonus here is that it will hopefully include sort of an analysis and a reporting of the results. So all of this data, essentially, we hope that in part two will be helpful to you guys as you implement the training and to assess what your trainees and what your staff are getting out of the training. But it's also going to help us because it's information that we at the Center Evaluation Team can use to really see how well this curriculum is working and what it's doing to achieve those outcomes, like Charmaine mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. So I hope that that did not get you less excited about the curriculum, and that this is essentially another piece of the curriculum that you can use really as part of the training. So we'll talk a lot more about it on December 15th, and then I'm also, just be on the lookout, I'm going to ask for folks to really, folks who are going to start using the curriculum to help implement this training package, essentially. So, and really that's the two-part evaluation of the curriculum. So we'll talk more about it on December 15th. So Charmaine, I'm going to turn it back to you because I know you have a few more things to say to folks before you open it up for question and answer.
Sure. And Hung, thank you very much. You made evaluation fun. You really did.
Good.
Yeah. At least for me. And we do want to provide this evaluation for people, not just for us, but we recognize that that states and agencies are really interested in knowing that their training was effective and that people obtain the knowledge and skills that they set out to do. So this evaluation package that we're putting together will allow you to do that. So it's pretty cool what Hung's put together, which you'll just have to wait until December 15th to see. Okay, so next we're going to talk about our training of trainers, TOT. And that's going to be a 90-minute webinar that's going to help you prepare to use the curriculum. My colleague, Brenda Lockwood, is going to review all of the curriculum materials and the key learning points of each module, identifying particularly sensitive areas, talking about the digital stories and how they might be used and things that might arise during the training. She's going to explain how to do the module activities and how to use those digital stories and integrate them. And she's going to highlight the resource links and all of the supplemental materials that are going to be available to you. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. And just a reminder of when it's going to be. I bet we could do a polling question now and say, when is our training of trainers? And you would already know this without even having to look at this slide because we've talked about the date so much. December 15th from 2 to 3:30 Eastern Time, and we'll be using this platform again. And everyone who's on this webinar will receive a link to it. We would suggest that the people who participate in this training of trainers would be the training managers, the curriculum developers, and the trainers who would actually be implementing and doing the training. As far as program people, it's really not necessary. This introductory webinar gives you enough taste of the curriculum to know what's available and to think about how it could be integrated into your own training systems right now. The training of trainers is really going to go into a lot more specificity and is really designed for training folks to customize it and then train the curriculum in their own training program. So you'll get an email for that. And the last thing that we want to do, and we have plenty of time for this, is to provide some opportunity for you to ask questions of us. And we are going to open up the phone lines. You can also type in questions in the chat feature. And Christy, if folks do that, you're going to have to read those to me because I don't see them. So,
Will do.
Questions or comments about what we have available or will have available on December 15th?
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to ask a question, please signal by pressing *1 on your telephone keypad. If you're using a speakerphone, please make sure your mute function is turned off to allow your signal to reach our equipment. A voice prompt on the phone line will indicate when your line is open. Please then state your name before posing your question. Again, please press *1 to ask a question. We'll pause for just a moment to allow everyone an opportunity to signal for questions. We'll now take our first question. Please go ahead.
Oh, hello. This is Greg Moore from DSS in South Carolina. Excuse me. I have a question regarding the training of trainers. We may not be, it's a little ahead of our schedule in terms of selecting who's going to be doing the trainers in our action plan. Some of us will be available who are on the development team, but is there, after December 15th, a way to do another training of trainers or to train the people who we eventually do select to be the trainers? Because we are not at that point at this time.
Greg, that is an excellent question, and the answer is yes. We do plan on providing both this introductory webinar and an additional training of trainers as necessary. We need to gauge what the interest is going to be out there, but we will definitely be doing this again, probably, I would say, late winter, early spring.
Okay, can I follow up?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And
I'm sorry.
Let's see, Christy, do we have folks' email addresses that we can also provide?
Yes. I don't know if we have anything on the last slide here, but yes, we can forward out all of our contact information as appropriate.
Okay.
I have a follow-up to that.
Sure.
Our action plan has us selecting just what training we're going to do. The team will be selecting the training and who we think should be doing the sex trafficking training and the reasonable and prudent parenting training in January, and then assigning that by the beginning of February for them to start developing it. It would be really wonderful. We could adjust our plan, but I mean, it would be really wonderful if near the end of January or early February there was an option to train trainers to redo this. I'm just saying.
Okay.
That would be timely for
Duly
us.
noted. Duly noted.
Thank you. And we are one of the, I'm sure, the few states who are in a 4E plan PIP to make this happen. And
okay.
So we don't have a lot of time. We have no time to waste. We're on a pretty tight schedule of getting everything done, including all the training and implementing with documentation by, as you know, September 29th. So
we will do whatever we can to accommodate. We want to be of service to you, so let's talk about this. We can talk about it later.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And for others as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder, if you would like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your touch-tone phone. And there are no further questions at this time. Please continue.
Are there any comments overall about the curriculum or what we have available to folks?
Hi, Charmaine. If I may, I can start addressing the questions that we received through the chat.
Okay. Let's do that.
We have several.
Okay.
Deborah asked, do you have or have the capability to obtain or create a timeline of events for law enforcement from initial contact to getting a victim through the chain of contacts for assistance?
That may be available in some of the resources that we are providing. We have a bunch of resources. That is not in the curriculum right now, but we do have links to other resources that could provide that information.
Great. Thank you. And our next question, and several others have asked this, can the webinar and the Train the Trainer can be archived to access as needed?
Yes, we will be archiving it.
Great. And then our next question comes from Diane. Is there any guidance provided in these resources for how to develop services, especially substance abuse treatment and mental health services, with expertise in working with children who have complex trauma histories?
There is guidance about developing a multidisciplinary team and employing trauma-informed techniques. We are also going to be doing a part 2 of this training as well, which will be providing more advanced skills. What you're talking about is also very clinical. So we know that working with victims requires a multidisciplinary team, and we do spend quite a bit of time talking about that. I hope that answered your question. Please type in more if you'd like further clarification.
Sure. I can continue with her comment, Charmaine, if that helps clarify.
Sure.
She states, we can screen and assess the needs, but if we don't have the appropriate resources, these children will end up in services that are not equipped to address their complex needs and issues. We have identified the need for separate and secret residential treatment as a primary need for child trafficking victims, but there are no such resources.
Again, it's got to be a community-wide approach, and we do talk about that and how to move forward with that, and our resources also identify how to do that as well. Other
Thank
questions?
you. I haven't seen a further clarification, so I will move on to the next question.
Okay.
Dorothy asks, will there be something similar for a curriculum for the prudent parenting standards?
Not at this time.
And that's all the questions I have.
There's
all right.
There's another question on the phone line.
Okay.
Okay, so please go ahead.
Yes, can someone who was not a part of this webinar today but fits the mold of part of the training team be a part of the Train the Trainer, or did they have to be a part of this today to participate?
Another excellent question. No, you do not have to have participated in this introductory webinar to participate in the Train the Trainer. We do suggest that as soon as the documents are available in CapLearn, that they be downloaded and folks review the curriculum prior to the Train the Trainer so that they can be ready with questions. In fact, we would expect that there will be many different people on our Training of Trainers webinar than who are present today.
Okay, great. And y'all will email those out, or should we download them from?
You will be able to download them from CapLearn, and we'll send an email through the registration when they're available. In the meantime, we have the PDF version of the curriculum that people can. That would actually be sufficient to review. So you can download those PDF versions today and send them on to the people who would be participating in our Training of Trainer webinar.
Great, thank you.
We hope it's useful.
And there are no further questions on the phone lines.
Christy, do you have any more questions?
I do have two more. Alan asks, is it possible to use parts of the curriculum since some of us began doing training some months ago?
Another excellent question, and the answer is yes, emphatically. We recognize that this curriculum might be a standalone training for you or something that you would integrate into, say, a foundational training, or that you have already developed some training. So you can customize this and use it to meet your needs. The only thing that I would say about just taking parts of the curriculum is that if you also use our evaluation, that you would need to adjust the evaluation. So yes, this curriculum has lots of flexibility for people. We strongly urge you to use all components, or make sure that if you don't use a component, that you're already covering it elsewhere. And then you had another question, Christy?
It was just a question about how to go to CapLearn. So I can send out the hyperlink through the chat feature.
Okay, that would be great. And again, it's capacity.childwelfare.gov, and then just click on Learn. Any other questions or comments? Rosie, do you have anything else to add?
No, not for me. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we sure appreciate the Children's Bureau's support in developing this curriculum, and also all of the people who have participated in developing, writing of this curriculum and the digital stories. We sure appreciate our storytellers and Joan Morse and her team for what they have done to develop the digital stories.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the conference call for today. We thank you for your participation. You may now disconnect your line and have a great day.